The cold woke him first. Not the soft chill of an apartment air conditioner or the winter draft that slipped through old Tokyo windows. This cold was alive, wet. It crawled beneath his skin and settled into his bones like icy fingers. Haruto Sano opened his eyes slowly. Darkness hung above him, broken by silver moonlight leaking through branches overhead. Leaves rustled in the wind. Somewhere nearby, water trickled over stone. He blinked. Trees. He sat upright instantly. Pain exploded through the back of his head. What the? His voice echoed into the forest and died there. The last thing he remembered was falling asleep in his tiny apartment after another 12-hour shift at the warehouse. Microwave ramen, phone battery at 2%, rain against the window. That was it. Now he was lying on damp earth in the middle of a forest. Haruto pushed himself to his feet, swaying. His sneakers sank slightly into mud. The air smelled sharp and clean, untouched by gasoline or smoke. No roads, no power lines, no city lights, only forest. His pulse quickened. Hello? Nothing answered. Then, a crack of branches. Haruto turned sharply. Several figures stepped from the darkness carrying torches. Men. No, boys and old men too. Their clothing looked ancient. Rough woven fabrics tied with rope belts, spears tipped with sharpened stone, hair bound with strips of leather. One of them pointed at Haruto and shouted something. Haruto stared blankly. The language sounded Japanese, but wrong. Older, rougher, like listening to a dialect buried beneath centuries. Another man approached carefully, holding his spear low. He circled Haruto once, eyes wide with suspicion. Then the oldest among them stepped forward. The elder's hair was white as snow and braided down his chest. Deep scars crossed his arms like old river paths. Around his neck hung carved bones and polished stones. The old man studied Haruto's clothes in silence. Then he spoke slowly. You from East Spirit Lands? Haruto froze. The accent was strange but understandable. I'm from Tokyo. The villagers exchanged confused looks. The elder narrowed his eyes. Tokyo! Haruto swallowed hard. What is this place? The elder stared at the sky for a long moment before answering. Land of Yamatai, village of Kurohama. Haruto's stomach dropped. Yamatai, ancient Japan. Impossible. No, he whispered. That's not possible. The elder pointed toward the village path. You come. Haruto hesitated. Several spears lifted slightly, not threatening, but close enough. He followed. The village sat beside a river valley surrounded by dense forests and distant mountains. Fires burned in stone pits. Smoke rose into the night sky. Children ran barefoot through mud while women prepared fish over open flames. Every person stopped when they saw him. Whispers spread instantly. Spirit man, foreign ghost, sky traveler. Haruto caught fragments of words as they stared. The elder brought him to the largest hut near the center of the settlement. Inside, warriors sat around a fire sharpening weapons. Axes, spears, wooden shields. One massive man with burned scars across half his face stood when Haruto entered. This him? The elder nodded. Strong body, good age, no war scars. The scarred warrior grunted approvingly. Haruto frowned. What's going on? The elder sat beside the fire. You are blessed by Emperor Shulong Ovi. The name meant nothing to Haruto. The elder continued. These are years of war. Western people cross sea with fire and bronze. Many men die. The warriors around the fire lowered their heads grimly. So Emperor, command this law. The elder pointed toward Haruto. Any man old enough to live alone but too young for war shall take 3 wives and make children, sons. Haruto stared at him. What? If family makes no son in 5 years, husband and wives go to war front. Silence filled the hut. Haruto actually laughed once in disbelief. No, absolutely not. Nobody laughed with him. The elder's expression remained calm. You have strong body, wide shoulders, good teeth, spirits favor you. I'm not marrying anybody. The scarred warrior slammed a spear butt against the floor. You speak against Emperor? Haruto stepped back immediately. The room suddenly felt dangerous. The elder lifted a hand, calming the warrior. You are frightened, understandable, but dawn's ceremony already prepared. Haruto opened his mouth to argue again. Then he saw it. Exhaustion, not cruelty, not excitement. These people truly believed this was survival. The elder spoke softer now. Many winters, many deaths, too few children. Haruto looked around the hut. Most of the warriors were old, or barely teenagers. The middle generation was missing. War had devoured them. You rest tonight, the elder said. Tomorrow, wives chosen. I didn't agree. The elder met his eyes evenly. No one agrees with hunger either. By sunrise, the entire village had gathered. Haruto stood near the river, wearing rough village clothing they had forced upon him during the night. His modern clothes had been taken away, treated almost like sacred objects. Drums echoed through the valley. Women stood in rows, some young, some frightened, some emotionless. The elder walked slowly before them. Haruto Sano, he announced awkwardly. Sky-blessed man. Strong blood. He receives 3 wives by Emperor's law. Haruto clenched his jaw. This felt unreal, like a nightmare refusing to end. The first woman stepped forward quietly. She looked around his age, maybe 20. Long black hair tied behind her head. Sharp eyes, thin from hunger, but healthy enough. She is Aiko, the elder said. Aiko bowed once without expression. The second woman approached more hesitantly, smaller, freckles across her nose, nervous hands twisting together. Hana. She avoided eye contact entirely. Then murmurs spread through the crowd. Several villagers carried a stretcher forward. Haruto frowned. A woman lay atop it beneath heavy blankets, pale, painfully thin. Her breathing shallow, one leg bent unnaturally beneath the cloth. She wasn't awake. The villagers set the stretcher down carefully. The elder spoke with complete seriousness. And third wife, Yui. Haruto stared. She's unconscious. She lives. She can't even walk. A few villagers looked away uncomfortably. The elder sighed. Yui's sick since winter fever. No family left alive, burden to village. Haruto looked at the frail woman again. Sunken cheeks, bandaged foot, bruises along thin arms. Not a bride, a dying person. The scarred warrior crossed his arms. Young men refuse her. Useless for children. Haruto felt anger rise in his chest. She's a human being. The villagers blinked at him strangely, as if the statement itself was unusual. The elder nodded slowly. Yes, now she is your human being. Haruto nearly snapped back at him. But then he looked at the unconscious woman again. No one else wanted her. No one. The ceremony lasted only minutes. Strings tied around wrists, shared cups of water, words spoken to river spirits. And suddenly he had 3 wives. Just like that. By midday, the villagers handed him bundles of dried fish, tools, and blankets before sending them toward the outskirts of the settlement where smaller family huts stood. Aiko carried supplies silently. Hana stumbled under her basket. The unconscious Yui remained on the stretcher. Haruto looked between the women and the distant hut they were expected to live in. Then he crouched beside Yui. The villagers watched curiously as he lifted her gently onto his back. She weighed almost nothing. A faint warmth pressed against him. Hana looked startled. You carry her yourself? What, you want her dragged through the mud? Hana immediately lowered her head. No. Aiko studied him carefully. Most men here probably would have left the weak behind. Haruto adjusted Yui carefully so her injured leg wouldn't move. The path to the hut wound uphill through tall grass and cedar trees. By the time they reached it, sweat soaked Haruto's back despite the cold air. The hut itself was pitiful. Crooked roof, cracked walls, tiny fire pit, a place given to people expected to fail. Haruto slowly lowered Yui onto a pile of blankets inside. For the first time, her eyes opened slightly. Dark brown, clouded with fever. She looked at him weakly, barely conscious. Warm. Then her eyes closed again. Haruto stared down at her silently. Outside, distant drums echoed through the valley as the village celebrated another round of forced marriages. Inside the tiny hut, the 3 women sat quietly around a weak fire while the strange man from the future tried to understand the impossible world he had fallen into. 10,000 years in the past, 3 wives, a war approaching, and 5 years to produce a son or die on the battlefield. Dawn came gray and cold across the valley of Kurohama. Mist drifted over the river like wandering spirits, while smoke slowly rose from the village hearths below. Somewhere in the distance, drums echoed faintly as hunters prepared for the day. Inside the tiny hut on the hill, Haruto Sano sat awake beside the weak fire pit. He had barely slept. Yui lay wrapped in blankets near the wall, breathing softly but unevenly. Her face remained pale even in the orange glow of the embers. Every now and then a tremor passed through her body. Aiko and Hana slept nearby, curled together beneath fur blankets like frightened sisters more than wives. Haruto rubbed his tired eyes. His entire life had become insanity in less than 2 days. 10,000 years in the past, forced marriage, ancient wars, primitive survival, and 3 women depending entirely on him. He stared quietly at Yui for a long moment. Then he muttered to himself, First things first, he stood. We get you girls healthy. The words sounded strange coming out loud, but once he said them, something settled inside him. A goal, a direction. His grandmother always used to say panic killed faster than wounds. If you don't know what to do, she would tell him, start with what keeps people alive. Food, water, warmth, medicine, everything else comes after. Haruto smiled faintly at the memory. His grandmother had been terrifying. Tiny woman, barely 5 feet tall, could glare hard enough to make grown men apologize for things they hadn't done yet. But she had taught him things most modern people never learned. Not just how medicine worked, how to make it, because, as she used to say, stores close, nature doesn't. Haruto rose quietly and stepped outside. Cold mountain air hit him immediately. The valley spread below in silver morning light while distant birds circled overhead. He crouched near the hut and began sorting through materials. Long grass, flexible reeds, thin branches, stone flakes, primitive, but workable. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. If you can't buy tools, make tools. If you can't make tools, survive without them. The old man had loved the outdoors more than civilization itself. Every summer, he dragged Haruto deep into the mountains for what he called real education. At the time, Haruto hated it. Now those lessons might save lives. He twisted the grasses together carefully, braiding them into cord. His fingers moved automatically from years of repetition. Loop, twist, pull tight, again. Soon he had several lengths of crude but usable twine. Next came the fish trap. Haruto walked toward the river carrying reeds and sharpened sticks. The water rushed cold and clear over smooth stones. Perfect. He crouched beside a narrow section where fish naturally funneled between rocks. Fish are stupid, his grandfather once said while laughing over a campfire. They swim where water tells them. Haruto built the trap into a funnel shape using woven reeds and sticks. Wide opening, narrow exit, easy to enter, impossible to escape. But a trap needed bait. He searched along the riverbank until he found what he needed. A dead deer-like animal, partly eaten by scavengers. Not fresh enough for people, fresh enough for fish. Haruto cut loose several strips of meat with a sharpened stone and dropped them deep into the woven trap before lowering it into the current. The scent would spread downstream. Fish would follow, and once inside, they would panic themselves into exhaustion trying to escape. Haruto wiped his hands on the grass and stood. One problem solved. Now came hunting. He gathered flexible wood from young trees and bent one carefully. Not ideal, but workable. Again, his grandfather's lessons returned. Wood remembers shape. Force it too hard, it snaps. Convince it slowly. Haruto heated the wood slightly over coals from a small travel fire until it bent easier. He tied the ends carefully with grass cord and tested the tension. Crude bow. Very crude. But enough for rabbits and birds. For arrows, he sharpened straight sticks and hardened the tips lightly with fire. Not modern, not efficient, but deadly at close range. By midday, Haruto had climbed higher into the hills overlooking the valley. The forest here felt untouched by history itself. Massive cedar trees towered overhead while moss covered ancient stones like green blankets. Birds cried through the canopy. He moved quietly, slowly, carefully. His grandfather had beaten one lesson into him endlessly. The forest hears impatient people. Haruto paused beside a bush. Tracks. Rabbit. Fresh. He knelt low, studying disturbed leaves and tiny prints in the dirt. A faint smile crossed his face. Some things never changed. Minutes later, he spotted movement. A rabbit. Small gray fur. Nibbling near roots. Haruto drew the bow slowly. Exhaled. Released. The arrow struck cleanly through the neck. The rabbit collapsed instantly. Sorry, Haruto murmured quietly. Over the next several hours, he caught 2 more rabbits and managed to bring down 2 pheasants from low tree branches. The primitive bow already showed signs of strain. But it had worked. As the sun lowered, Haruto discovered a hidden nest tucked among tall grasses. Eggs. 7 of them. He carefully wrapped them in woven leaves before placing them into a grass basket he had made during his walk. Protein, fat, nutrients. The girls needed all of it, especially Yui. By late afternoon, Haruto finally began searching for medicinal plants. This part worried him most. Modern medicine was precise. Nature was not. One mistake could kill someone, but his grandmother had drilled survival remedies into him relentlessly. For fever, pain, infection, swelling, digestive sickness, cuts, broken bones. Before pharmacies, she used to say, People either learned plants or they died. Near a damp hillside, Haruto finally found what he hoped for: yarrow, tiny white flowers clustered atop green stems. His grandmother called it soldier's herb, good for fever and inflammation. Nearby, he found willow bark, natural pain relief, primitive aspirin, then wild ginger roots, useful for nausea and improving circulation. He gathered everything carefully, whispering the names to himself repeatedly so he wouldn't mix them up. By the time he returned to the river, the sky had turned orange. Haruto checked his fish trap. He grinned immediately. Fish thrashed wildly inside the woven funnel. 6 of them. Silver-scaled river fish nearly the size of his forearm. "Thank you, Grandpa." He reset the trap before loading the fish into his basket alongside the rabbits, pheasants, eggs, medicinal plants, and bundles of firewood. The basket weighed heavily against his back as he descended the mountain path toward home. But for the first time since arriving in this ancient world, he felt useful. Smoke curled from the hut chimney when he returned. Aiko stood outside, grinding grain with a stone, while Hana fetched water from a nearby stream. Both women froze when they saw the overflowing basket on Haruto's back. Hana's eyes widened. "How?" Haruto lowered the basket heavily onto the ground. "We're eating good tonight." The smell of roasting meat soon filled the hut. Rabbit cooked over open flames while fish steamed beside heated stones wrapped in leaves. Pheasant fat crackled into the fire. The women stared almost nervously at the amount of food. Haruto noticed immediately they weren't used to this. These people lived close to starvation. Every meal was survival. He tore apart cooked rabbit and handed large portions to each woman. "Eat." Aiko hesitated. "This much?" "Yes. But winter stores. We'll worry about winter later." Hana carefully bit into pheasant meat and almost looked shocked by the flavor. Yui sat propped against blankets, barely awake. Haruto knelt beside her and gently hold pieces of soft fish and egg. "Small bites." She obeyed weakly. After everyone finished eating, Haruto finally began preparing the medicine. He crushed willow bark carefully between stones before boiling it into water alongside yarrow flowers and ginger root. The hut filled with bitter, earthy smells. Aiko watched cautiously. "What is this?" "Medicine. You know spirit healing?" Haruto nearly laughed. "No, just old knowledge." He strained the liquid through woven grass into small clay cups. The tea looked awful. It probably tasted worse. But it might help. He handed cups first to Aiko and Hana. "This will help fever and pain. Maybe help you sleep better too." The women accepted the medicine carefully. Then Haruto moved beside Yui. Her skin still burned with fever. He lifted her gently and held the cup near her lips. "This one's important," he said softly. Yui managed a weak nod before drinking slowly. Her face twisted instantly. Bitter. Medicine usually is. For the first time, a faint smile appeared on her face. Tiny, weak, but real. Haruto sat beside the fire afterward while the women slowly drifted towards sleep. Outside, the ancient world continued beneath the stars. But inside the hut, warmth had finally begun to replace despair. And for the first time since arriving 10,000 years in the past, Haruto felt like maybe they actually had a chance to survive. 2 weeks changed everything. Not completely. Not magically. But enough that the tiny hut on the hill no longer felt like a place people came to die. Morning sunlight now spilled through patched cracks in the walls onto swept floors and drying herbs hanging from wooden beams overhead. Smoke curled gently from the cooking pit, while the scent of roasted fish and crushed ginger lingered warmly in the air. And for the first time since arriving in ancient Yamatai, Haruto heard laughter inside the house. Soft laughter. Careful laughter. But real. He stood outside near the river, washing blood from a freshly cleaned pheasant, when he heard Hana laugh again at something Aiko said. It made him smile without realizing it. 2 weeks ago, the girls barely spoke. Now they argued quietly over cooking methods. Yui, who had arrived unconscious and unable to walk, was currently standing outside the hut with a woven basket in her arms. Standing. Haruto still couldn't fully believe it. She remained thin, and her injured leg forced her to move slowly, but the fever was gone. The swelling in her joints had faded. Color had returned faintly to her cheeks. Food, rest, medicine, warmth. Human bodies were stubborn things. Give them a chance, and they fought desperately to survive. Haruto set the pheasant aside and looked toward the mountains. The last 2 weeks had nearly killed him. Every sunrise, he climbed into the forests gathering herbs, checking traps, fishing the river, hunting rabbits and pheasants, carrying firewood back down the mountain until his shoulders burned. But it was working. The women were healing. And that mattered. Even if another problem remained hanging silently over the household like a storm cloud. Children. The Emperor's Law. 5 years. Haruto hated thinking about it because the truth was painfully simple. None of them were ready, and neither was he. That thought embarrassed him more than he wanted to admit. In his old life back in modern Japan, Haruto had never been good with women. He worked too much, spoke too awkwardly. Most of his relationships barely lasted a few months. He had never even lived with a girlfriend, never crossed that final line into true intimacy. Now suddenly he had 3 wives, 3 women depending on him, 3 women expected by society to bear his children. The entire situation felt absurd. One evening after dinner, the issue finally surfaced. Rain tapped softly against the roof while firelight flickered across the walls. Aiko sat grinding grain while Hana repaired a torn blanket with bone needles. Yui quietly drank medicinal tea beside the fire. Then Hana spoke hesitantly. Haruto. He looked up from carving fishing hooks. Yeah? She fidgeted nervously. You do not like women? Haruto blinked. What? Aiko avoided eye contact. In village, she said carefully, men who take wives usually. Her face reddened slightly. Claim them quickly. Understanding hit him instantly. Oh. Silence filled the hut. Yui stared quietly into her cup. Haruto rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. Well, I'm not doing that. The girls exchanged confused looks. Hana tilted her head slightly. Why? The question sounded genuinely innocent. Not accusing, not frightened, just confused, as if his behavior made no sense. Haruto set down the fishing hook slowly. Because to them, it probably didn't. He stared into the fire before answering. In the world I come from, women and men are equals. The girls looked even more confused. Equals? Aiko repeated softly. Nobody belongs to anybody. Hana frowned slightly. But wives belong to husband. No, Haruto said firmly. Not to me. The room became very still. In my world, he continued slowly, trying to find words they could understand, if 2 people want to be together, both choose it, together. Aiko stared at him. But Emperor gave us to you. I know. Then why not force us? The question hit him like a punch. Not because she was cruel, because she honestly expected it. Haruto looked at the 3 women carefully. They had grown up in a world where their value was measured in sons, survival, and obedience. A world where choice barely existed. And suddenly, he understood something painful. They weren't waiting for kindness. They were waiting for the moment kindness ended. Haruto spoke quietly. I would rather die than force any of you to do something against your will. Nobody moved. I mean that, he continued, fully. I will never lay a hand on any of you unless you want me to. The fire cracked softly. Yui lowered her eyes suddenly. Hana's lips trembled. Aiko turned her face away quickly. Haruto frowned. What? Then he realized. Tears. All 3 women were crying silently, not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears slipping down tired faces. Hana wiped her eyes first. No man, she whispered weakly, has ever said women matter. The words hurt more than Haruto expected. He suddenly missed his old world terribly. Not because it was perfect. God, no. But because hearing basic human decency sound revolutionary felt horrifying. His great-aunt used to say something similar when he was younger. The smallest kindness can look like magic to someone who's only known cruelty. At the time, he never truly understood it. Now he did. The next morning, Haruto decided on something important. If they were going to survive this world, they needed better food. Not just survival food, real food, nutritious food. His grandmother and aunt had taught him cooking obsessively growing up. Not fancy restaurant cooking, practical cooking. How to stretch ingredients, how to preserve food, how to make simple things taste comforting. And one memory suddenly stood out vividly. Tofu. Back home, a tiny restaurant near his apartment served fried tofu with ginger sauce that practically melted in your mouth. The people of this era already grew early soy plants, though primitive compared to modern crops. But most villagers simply crushed them into bland porridge. Nobody understood the full process. Haruto intended to change that. The work was exhausting. First came gathering. He collected baskets of soybeans from nearby fields before soaking them in river water overnight. Then came grinding, hours of grinding. stone against stone until his arms shook from effort. The women watched curiously as he turned softened beans into thick, pale paste. "What are you making?" Hana asked. "Something good," Haruto muttered tiredly. After boiling the mixture, he strained it through woven cloth, separating liquid from pulp. Soy milk. Primitive, but recognizable. Then came the hardest part, curdling. His grandmother once explained the science while smacking him lightly with a spoon. Proteins separate when conditions change. Cooking is chemistry pretending to be magic. Using mineral-rich salts gathered from dried river deposits, Haruto slowly milked to separate into soft white curds. The girls stared in amazement. "It broke," Yui said nervously. "No," Haruto grinned. "It's becoming tofu." Once pressed beneath weighted stones, the curds formed firm, pale blocks. Finally, the frying. Hot oil crackled loudly as tofu cubes browned golden over the fire. The smell alone filled the hut with warmth. Nutty, savory, crisp. Haruto handed each girl a piece carefully. Hana bit first, then her eyes widened enormously. Aiko covered her mouth in surprise. Even Yui stared at the tofu like it was some sacred treasure. "It tastes," she whispered. "Good?" Haruto offered. Yui nodded rapidly. "Very good." For a moment, the tiny hut felt less like ancient poverty and more like home. But food alone wouldn't solve everything. They needed stability, resources, money, or whatever passed for money here. So later that afternoon, Haruto made his way down toward the village center to speak with the elder. The old man sat outside his hut, carving symbols into wood when Haruto arrived. "You survive another week," the elder observed. "Barely." The elder laughed deeply. Haruto sat nearby. "I need to understand trade here." The elder reached into a pouch and placed 3 rings onto a cloth. Copper, silver, gold. Simple metal circles worn smooth with age. "Copper rings," the elder explained. "Most common," he pointed to the silver. "Silver rings for large trade. Then gold. Golden rings for wealth." Haruto picked one up curiously. "No coins?" "Rings easier to carry." The elder leaned closer. "There is also jade ring." His expression became respectful instantly. "But only nobles touch jade." Haruto laughed. "I'm definitely not noble." The elder laughed with him. "Perhaps not, but you speak strangely enough to fool spirits." Haruto smiled faintly. Then his expression turned serious. "What do people need most?" The elder answered immediately. "Food." His face darkened. "Too many men gone to war. Too many hunters dead. Old people cannot teach forests anymore." He gestured toward the village. "We survive on thin porridge now." Haruto looked around carefully. He could see it now. Thin bodies. Weak children. Exhausted elders. Starvation hiding beneath routine. "I can hunt," Haruto said slowly. The elder nodded once. "Yes, but if I'm part of this village, shouldn't I just give food?" The elder looked genuinely offended. "Never give freely." Haruto blinked. "What?" "To take nothing shames both sides." The elder pointed at him sternly. "Trade is honor. Giving without receiving makes beggars." The idea twisted uncomfortably inside Haruto. Back home, people donated food all the time, helped neighbors, shared resources. But this world viewed balance differently. Exchange meant dignity. Receiving without giving created debt. It was strange, but maybe understandable in a world always one winter away from death. As Haruto climbed back toward the hut that evening, dark thoughts briefly crept into his mind. 5 years, children, war, front lines, death. Maybe this ancient world would eventually kill him, after all. The thought settled coldly into his chest. Then suddenly his great-aunt's voice echoed through memory. "If a thought poisons your heart," she used to say, "snuff it out like a candle. Leave room for better thoughts to grow." Haruto exhaled slowly and pushed the darkness away. Ahead, warm firelight glowed softly from the little hut on the hill. And for now, that was enough reason to keep moving forward. The village of Kurohama no longer smelled only of smoke and wet grain. Now sometimes, very faintly, it smelled like real food. Roasted pheasant dripping with fat over open flames, fish steamed with herbs, rabbit sizzling on heated stones. To Haruto, the smells reminded him of tiny food stalls tucked between crowded Tokyo streets. To the villagers, the smells were almost painful, because most of them had forgotten food could smell good. 3 weeks had passed since Haruto arrived in this ancient age, and already the little hut on the hill had become the subject of whispers throughout the village. The strange skyman, the hunter with impossible knowledge, the husband who didn't beat his wives, the man whose house smelled like life instead of starvation. That morning, Haruto stood outside beside hanging strips of smoking rabbit, while several boys from nearby huts watched from a distance. Not children exactly. Young men, 14, 15, 16, old enough to marry, too young for war, too inexperienced to survive. Haruto could see it in their eyes every time they watched him return from the mountains carrying baskets overflowing with food. Desperation, not greed. Hunger. He understood it well. His grandfather used to say starving people listened faster than full ones. Haruto stared at the boys for a moment before turning toward the village center. I need to speak with the elder. Aiko looked up from washing herbs. You are going now? Yeah. Hana tilted her head curiously. About hunting? Haruto nodded. If I teach enough people to hunt properly, the whole village changes. Yui smiled softly from beside the fire pit. You speak like chief already. Haruto laughed nervously. Absolutely not. Still, as he walked through the village, people stepped aside respectfully now. Not fear, something else. Hope. The elder sat outside his hut repairing a fishing net with slow, careful fingers. His old wife slept nearby beneath blankets while their little granddaughter played with carved wooden animals in the dirt. The old man looked up and smiled faintly. Skyman comes with thinking face. Haruto sat beside him. I have an idea. Dangerous already, Haruto chuckled. I want to teach the boys how to hunt. The elder paused. His hands stopped moving entirely. For a long moment, only the wind spoke between them. Finally, the old man asked quietly, Why? Because your village is dying. Haruto didn't soften the words. The elder didn't argue. Most hunters gone, Haruto continued. Most knowledge gone too. If nobody teaches these boys now, what happens in 10 years? The old man stared toward the mountains. More graves. Haruto nodded once. So I teach them. The elder rubbed his beard thoughtfully. They will not listen easily. I know. Boys think strength is same as skill. Haruto snorted. That never changes, apparently. The elder gave him a strange look, but continued thinking. Finally, he nodded slowly. If you can teach our boys to hunt, his voice grew quieter. Maybe Kurohama lives again. Haruto smiled slightly. Then another thought crossed his mind. There's something else. The elder waited. In this village, is it wrong to feed family without charging them? The old man looked confused. What do you mean? Haruto gestured vaguely. If I bring food to someone hungry, shouldn't I just give it? The elder frowned deeply. You still think strangely. Maybe. The old man pointed toward Haruto's hut. Do your wives pay to eat? No. Why? Because they're family. The elder nodded once, then answer already exists. Haruto blinked. The elder leaned closer. Village pays because village is village. Family eats because family is family. Something about the answer hit Haruto harder than expected. Simple, direct, ancient, but understandable. Slowly, Haruto reached behind himself and pulled forward a woven basket he had carried down from the hill. The scent hit instantly. Smoked rabbit, herbed pheasant, cooked vegetables. The elder's eyes widened. Haruto carefully unpacked each item. Smoked rabbit strips, he set them down gently. Fried rabbit skewers. Then another wrapped bundle. Steamed pheasant with mountain herbs. Small clay jars followed. Fried leaves for tea. Then cooked squash and wild carrots glazed lightly in rendered bird fat. The elder stared silently. His little granddaughter practically drooled beside him. Haruto scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. I spoke to the gods, he said carefully, trying to frame things in a way the village would accept. They granted us too much food, since you're more like a grandfather to me. His voice softened slightly. I thought it was only right to feed you too. The elder's hands trembled slightly. For a moment, Haruto worried he had offended him somehow. Then he realized. The old man's eyes were wet. Nobody had taken care of him in years. He had spent so long carrying the village that nobody remembered he was old too. The elder swallowed hard before speaking. You strange man. His voice cracked faintly. Very strange man. That night, the elder ate until his stomach hurt for the first time in years. His wife cried quietly over the pheasant because she had forgotten meat could taste tender instead of tough. Their granddaughter fell asleep with grease on her cheeks and a smile on her face. And as the smells drifted through the village, people noticed. Questions spread quickly. Where did the elder get food like that? What was that smell? Why did his house smell like a festival? By sunset, the elder had made his decision. He walked slowly through Kurohama, leaning on his carved staff. Hear me, he shouted. Villagers emerged from huts immediately. The Skyman teaches hunting tomorrow. Any young man wishing to feed his family may learn. Murmurs spread instantly. 3 copper rings for teaching. That caused even louder reactions. Some complained, most didn't. Because everyone knew one truth. 3 copper rings meant nothing if your family starved. By nightfall, young men began climbing toward Haruto's hut carrying small cloth pouches filled with copper rings. Haruto greeted each personally. Some looked nervous, some excited, some desperate. He gave every single one a bowl of food before lessons even started. Real food. Hot food. The boys nearly lost their minds tasting fried rabbit for the first time. One whispered, "It crunches." Another stared at tofu like it was divine treasure. Then came the trouble. 3 large young men approached from the darkness, laughing loudly. The villagers parted immediately. Bullies. Haruto recognized the type instantly. Every era had them. The largest stepped forward, massive shoulders, crooked nose, scar running from forehead down across his neck. His name was Daichi, and he clearly enjoyed making people afraid. "So," Daichi sneered, "primitive Skyman teaches hunting?" The other 2 laughed. Haruto stayed calm. "If you want to learn, pay the fee." Daichi stepped closer. "What can you teach us?" His breath smelled sour. "We are strong. You are weak." The second bully spat into the dirt. "You hunt rabbits. Children hunt rabbits." Daichi shoved Haruto hard in the chest. The gathered boys gasped. "You know nothing," Daichi growled. "I am strongest hunter in Kurohama." Haruto stumbled slightly, then slowly straightened. No anger, no fear, just tired disappointment. He reached calmly into a cloth pouch hanging at his side. Daichi smirked. "What? Pulling magic?" Instead, Haruto unwrapped a leaf bundle. Steam escaped instantly. The smell hit everyone nearby like a physical force. Grilled river fish glazed lightly and rendered fat and herbs. Crisp skin, juicy meat. The scent alone silenced the crowd. Haruto took a slow, deliberate bite. Crunch. Juice dripped slightly down the fish. He closed his eyes dramatically. "Wow," he said casually. "Apparently I have nothing to teach you." The gathered boys started laughing immediately. Haruto took another bite. "This fish is incredible." Daichi's stomach growled loudly enough for everyone to hear. The crowd laughed harder. Haruto shrugged calmly and walked past him. "Enjoy your mush." The damage was catastrophic. Within minutes, every young man in the village sprinted home, searching desperately for copper rings. Parents dug through storage jars. Grandmothers offered hidden savings. One boy literally traded his blanket for tuition. By full dark, Haruto's hut overflowed with students. Even some older men came quietly hoping to learn. Inside, warmth filled the small house. Bowls of fish stew passed between hands. Rabbit skewers disappeared almost instantly. The boys listened with absolute focus. Haruto stood before them holding simple sticks. "Lesson 1, he said. "If your tools break and you die because you can't make new ones, that's your fault." Confused silence. Haruto grinned. "My grandfather taught me something important." He lifted a sharpened branch. "A hunter without knowledge is just meat walking through the forest." For hours, he taught them basics. How to identify flexible wood, how to braid grasses into strong cord, how to make simple traps, how to move quietly, how to watch wind direction. The boys bombarded him with questions constantly. How do you know rabbit trails? Why harden wood in fire? Why fish trap narrow? What herbs stop bleeding? Haruto answered everything patiently, and for the first time in years, the village boys looked excited about tomorrow. Meanwhile, across the village, Daichi and his 2 friends sat miserably around a clay bowl of watery white porridge. No meat, no flavor, no smell except wet grain. Outside their hut, delicious scents drifted through the night air from nearly every home. Cooked pheasant, roasted rabbit, fish stew, children laughing, families eating. One of the smaller bullies stared miserably into his bowl. Maybe he knows things. Daichi slammed his spoon down. "Anyone can hunt. But I am strongest hunter." Outside, another nearby house erupted into cheers as someone tasted grilled pheasant for the first time. The third bully muttered weakly, "Their house smells amazing." Daichi looked like he might explode. The next morning, nearly 20 boys gathered outside Haruto's hut before sunrise. Each carried crude weapons and enormous determination. Haruto led them into the mountains. The forest became their classroom. He taught them how animals moved, how broken branches revealed trails, how birds reacted to predators, how silence itself could speak. By midday, the boys had already caught rabbits using simple funnel traps. One nearly cried from excitement. In the afternoon, they checked fish traps along the river. Then came larger game. Together, they brought down deer-like creatures using coordinated positioning. Haruto adapted from modern hunting concepts. Even a badger fell to carefully placed spears. By sunset, the boys staggered home, carrying more food than most families had seen in months. The village erupted into celebration. Children screamed happily, seeing actual meat. Women cried openly. Grandparents thanked the gods repeatedly. Smoke filled the air, carrying rich, savory scents across Kurohama. And just as Haruto instructed, every hunting group set aside a portion for the elder. At first, the boys didn't understand. Why give elder food? Haruto answered simply. If elder is grandfather to village, then family feeds grandfather too. The idea spread quickly. That night, the elder's house overflowed with gifts: fish, rabbit, birds, roots, herbs, enough food to feed his family for weeks. The old man sat silently beside the piles while tears rolled slowly down his weathered face. His wife smiled softly beside him, and deep in his heart, the elder truly believed only one explanation made sense. The gods had sent Haruto Sano not merely to save 3 forgotten women, but to save Kurohama itself. 6 months changed Kurohama so completely that sometimes Haruto wondered if he had dreamed the starving village he first arrived in. Smoke still curled into the sky every morning. The river still flowed cold through the valley. The mountains still stood like ancient gods watching silently over the land. But now, children laughed while carrying fish baskets. Women traded herbs and vegetables outside their homes. Old men sat together, chewing smoked rabbit, while arguing over whose grandson had become the better hunter. And every evening, the village smelled incredible. Grilled pheasant glazed in rendered fat, herbed river fish steaming in leaves, roasted root vegetables, fried tofu crisped golden over open fire. Even simple soups now carried layers of flavor the villagers once thought only spirits could create. Haruto had not only taught them how to hunt, he had taught them how to cook. At first, the lesson seemed ridiculous to the villagers. Why pay 5 copper rings for cooking? Food is food. Boil it and eat it. Then they tasted what he made. That changed everything. Haruto still remembered the first official cooking class held outside his hut. Nearly 20 villagers packed together watching him fry tofu with herbs and rendered pheasant fat while steam rolled into the cold mountain air. "What is this called?" one old woman asked. "Comfort food," Haruto answered honestly. They didn't understand the phrase, but they understood the taste. The villagers quickly learned that seasoning mattered, preparation mattered, cooking time mattered, texture mattered. Even the children noticed. One little girl cried because crispy fried tofu sounded happy when bitten. Now every family in Kurohama tried recreating Haruto's recipes. Some succeeded, some absolutely did not. One old man accidentally burned an entire cooking pit trying to fry fish. Another nearly poisoned himself experimenting with random mushrooms. Haruto had to add a whole class titled, "Please Stop Eating Things That Glow." Still, the village thrived, except for 3 people. Daichi and his 2 followers sat every night in their dark hut eating the same watery porridge they had mocked everyone else for escaping. Their pride had become a prison. The smells drifting through the village tortured them, especially at night. Children passed by eating grilled fish on sticks. Families laughed over bowls of rich stew. Steam drifted from homes carrying scents of garlic-like mountain herbs and roasted meat. Meanwhile, Daichi's hut smelled like wet grain. One night, one of the younger boys inside finally snapped. He stared miserably into his bowl before blurting out, "If you're greatest hunter, why do we eat this while everyone else eats meat?" Silence slammed into the hut. Daichi slowly looked up. The scar along his face twisted as his jaw tightened. "What did you say?" The boy shrank instantly. I just mean, you question me?" Outside, another family erupted into laughter as someone shouted, "This fish is amazing." Daichi gripped his bowl so hard it cracked. The next morning, he marched directly toward Haruto's hilltop house. The entire village noticed. Aiko saw him first, while hanging herbs outside. "Haruto." Her voice carried immediate tension. He stepped outside calmly. Daichi stood at the bottom of the hill with his 2 followers behind him. The big man looked exhausted, hungry, angry. Pride and starvation mixed together into something ugly. Villagers slowly began gathering nearby. Daichi pointed directly at Haruto. I challenge you. Haruto sighed immediately. No. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Daichi stepped closer. You afraid? No, Haruto answered honestly. I'm tired. The villagers looked confused by that answer. Haruto rubbed his forehead. Daichi, just let me teach you. I need nothing from you. Then buy food from me. The crowd gasped slightly. Haruto continued patiently. You don't even need lessons. Just buy meals. Taste what you're missing. Daichi spat into the dirt. I need none of your food. I great hunter. Haruto looked genuinely puzzled. Then why do you eat porridge every night while everyone else eats meat and vegetables? A few villagers covered smiles immediately. Haruto continued carefully. You'd think the greatest hunter in the village would eat boar, deer, maybe even mountain lion. Daichi blinked. What is mountain lion? Haruto froze. Right. Wrong continent. Wrong era. He coughed awkwardly. Forget that last one. The villagers whispered curiously anyway. Mountain lion sounded terrifying. Daichi pointed aggressively. 3 days in wilderness. Haruto immediately shook his head. No. Winner stays strongest hunter. No. Loser leaves village. The crowd erupted. Aiko grabbed Haruto's arm instantly. No. Yui looked pale. Hana whispered urgently. He'll try to kill you. Haruto believed that too. He looked at Daichi carefully. The man wasn't evil exactly, just trapped. Trapped by pride, by hunger, by the need to feel powerful in a world constantly stealing power away from everyone. Haruto tried one last time. You don't have to do this. Daichi stepped closer until they were nearly chest to chest. Then kneel and admit I stronger. Haruto stared at him silently, then sighed. Fine. The crowd exploded into excited shouting. That night, the atmosphere inside Haruto's hut felt tense and quiet. Rain tapped softly against the roof while the women prepared supplies. Aiko wrapped smoked fish carefully in leaves. Hana packed dried vegetables and roasted roots. Yui prepared herbal tea leaves. You should not go, Hana whispered. Haruto smiled faintly. If I don't, this keeps going forever. Aiko sat beside him. He is bigger than you. Haruto chuckled softly. My mother used to say size means nothing if someone knows where to stand. The girls looked confused. Haruto leaned back slightly, memories surfacing. His childhood had been strange. Most boys spent weekends playing games. Haruto spent weekends getting thrown across mats by martial arts instructors. Karate, taekwondo, aikido. His mother insisted constantly, if I cannot always protect you, then you must protect yourself. At the time, he hated it. Now he silently thanked her. Yui handed him a small cloth bundle. Tea, Haruto smiled. His grandfather's wilderness teachings returned vividly. One meal at night, the old man used to say, hungry men work harder. Morning tea suppressed hunger, another cup around midday, then one good meal before sleep. Efficient, simple, survival. At dawn, the challenge began. The entire village gathered to watch the two men leave. Daichi carried heavy spears and a massive axe. Haruto carried lighter gear. Bow, knife, cord, simple traps, cooking tools. Tea leaves. The contrast alone made villagers whisper. Daichi laughed loudly. You hunt rabbits like women, Haruto shrugged, and eat better than you. Several boys snorted, trying not to laugh. Then both hunters vanished into the wilderness. The first day revealed everything immediately. Daichi hunted with force. Haruto hunted with patience. The big man stomped through forests, chasing movement loudly. Haruto listened, watched, waited. He checked wind constantly, studied tracks, examined broken branches. He remembered every lesson his grandfather ever taught him. The forest speaks quietly. Loud hunters starve. By sunset, Haruto already had 2 rabbits, 4 pheasants, and several fish trapped along the river. Daichi had nothing. The second day worsened the difference. Haruto discovered elk tracks near a mountain clearing. Huge animal, powerful, dangerous. He spent hours tracking carefully through mud and cedar shadows before finally spotting the creature grazing near a stream. Magnificent, tall antlers, massive shoulders. Haruto whispered softly, "Sorry, brother." The kill took precision, not strength. One carefully placed arrow followed by a spear strike when the wounded animal charged. The impact nearly broke Haruto's ribs anyway. But eventually the elk collapsed. Haruto sat beside it, breathing heavily. "Grandpa," he muttered weakly, "you seriously undersold how terrifying this is." Later that day, he trapped a wild boar-like creature similar to a warthog near muddy brushland. The thing nearly gutted him before he brought it down. By the third day, Haruto's camp overflowed with food. 6 rabbits, 12 pheasants, 3 bundles of fish, 1 elk, one wild boar. Meanwhile, Daichi finally managed one successful kill, a mountain goat, female. When both men returned, dragging their catches behind them, the entire village rushed forward shouting excitedly. Children stared at Haruto's mountain of food in disbelief. Even the elder looked stunned. Daichi grinned proudly at his goat. Then Haruto frowned immediately. "You can't eat that." Daichi blinked. "What?" "The goat." "Why?" Haruto pointed calmly. "It's female." Confused murmurs spread. Daichi laughed mockingly. "Meat is meat." Before Haruto could answer, several older hunters suddenly nodded grimly. "He right. You hunt males, never females." One old woman crossed herself fearfully. "To kill mothers brings famine." The elder stepped forward slowly. His expression turned disappointed. "For great hunter," he gestured toward the goat. "Bringing back female goat, same as bringing back nothing." Daichi's face went pale. The elder continued. "This man brings more food in 3 days than you hunt in 3 moons." The villagers murmured agreement immediately. The elder lifted his staff. "By challenge law, title of strongest hunter removed from Daichi." Silence fell heavily. The old man's voice softened slightly. "You leave village." Daichi looked utterly destroyed. Not angry, broken. Then suddenly Haruto stepped forward. "No." Everyone stared. Haruto walked directly toward Daichi, carrying a fresh pheasant glazed in butter and herbs. Steam rose gently from the meat. The smell alone nearly made Daichi collapse. Haruto pressed it into his hands. Then he handed him something stranger, a clay cup filled with bright orange liquid. The villagers stared in awe. Liquid sunlight. "What is this?" Daichi whispered weakly. "Eat and drink." Daichi looked confused. Haruto smiled softly. "We hunted under same stars, same moon." Then he spoke carefully in words the villagers would understand. "The gods spoke to me." Gasps spread instantly. "You and I are brothers." Daichi's eyes widened. "If you lose title, then you are family." Haruto's voice softened further. "And family gets fed." For one horrible second, Daichi almost cried. Then pride returned like poison. His face twisted violently. Even the gods pitied him now. That humiliation hurt worse than hunger ever could. With a roar, he threw the pheasant into the dirt. The crowd gasped. Then he slapped the orange drink back against Haruto's chest. Liquid splashed everywhere. "I need nothing from you." And with that, Daichi stormed out of Kurohama forever. Haruto immediately shouted after him dramatically. "Brother, no! Please come back!" The villagers thought he sounded heartbroken. In reality, Haruto was absolutely mocking him, though thankfully nobody understood sarcasm from 10,000 years in the future. The elder quietly picked up the discarded pheasant. He dusted it off carefully before slipping it behind his back to his granddaughter, who ran home grinning like she carried treasure from heaven. Then Haruto looked at the orange drink, sadly. "Well, that's unfortunate." The elder stared at the cup. "What was golden liquid?" Haruto handed it over carefully. "Ancient drink." The elder held it reverently. "From gods?" Haruto grinned tiredly. "You can call it nectar of the gods." The elder whispered softly. "Am I worthy?" Haruto laughed. "I think so." The old man drank. Immediately his eyes widened enormously. Sweetness exploded across his tongue. Bright citrus, freshness. Sunlight in liquid form. The elder stared at the cup, then at Haruto, then back at the cup. Finally he whispered in absolute certainty, "You are of gods." Haruto groaned internally. The elder lifted both hands toward the heavens. "The gods bless Kurohama, bringing this man to us." Villagers immediately began bowing toward Haruto. "Oh no," Haruto muttered. Then things somehow became worse. 4 young women stepped nervously from the crowd. One bowed deeply. "Please marry me." Another nodded quickly. "You feed people." Third girl, "You kind." Fourth girl, "You smell like delicious food." Haruto stared at them in complete disbelief. Behind him, Aiko was trying desperately not to laugh. Hana looked horrified. Yui covered her mouth, smiling. Haruto slowly lifted his eyes toward the heavens. The clouds drifted peacefully overhead. Birds circled the mountains, and in the quietest voice imaginable, he whispered, "Can I go home now?"